continuation of last week's talk. So we're going to touch some of the other points that we failed to touch last week. This was actually going to be more powerful as I was kind of going over the material and thinking about, presenting this information to you the best way possible so that you can retain what it is. So we're going to be talking about, again, how to get more of what it is that you want. Last week we talked about how to get what you want. So now we're going to talk about, this is like part two without saying part two. I just said part two. We're going to be talking about how to get more of what you want. So let's go and get started. So the next thing that we have to be mindful of when we're talking about how to get more, John Wick, how to get more of what it is that you want, you have to be mindful of your emotions. Now, emotions can act as a fuel to manifesting much quicker, talking about accelerating your manifestation. Neville would often say that feeling is the secret. So it's not just feelings, it's, whatever it is, your intentions, your joy, your gratitude. We talk about when you want to manifest more money, then of course you get into a place of gratitude. If you want to manifest, a loving relationship, then you get into a place of loving yourself. If you want to manifest health, then you get into the attitude of being healthier. So when we're talking about emotions, it's movement out from. So emotion starts within and it's actually that movement out from. Again, your reality is a mirror or reflection. In scripture, it talks about the shadow. So reality is the shadow, it's not the substance. Have you ever been walking down the street and you noticed a shadow, for example? When you notice that shadow, what happens is you walk on the shadow and you walk right through it. It's not real. And this is how reality is. Reality, as much as we may believe that it's fixed, isn't fixed. Reality is the shadow of what it is that we believe. Now, again, I know that for many people, when they hear something like that, they're like, okay, this stuff is not, what he's talking about, just crazy. And I understand that it sounds crazy when it does. Einstein would say the question was, does time vary from person to person? It absolutely does. Einstein said it this way, that when you're sitting with a pretty girl, time just flies by. But when you're on a hot stove, for example, when you're burning yourself, time seems like goes on forever. Two individuals can actually experience the same event, and one says, "Man, time really just flew by." The other person says, "Man, time just dragged along." It's relativity. So whatever your mindset is about time, it's like the person that is up in age and so forth says that, of course, time flies by, and the younger person thinks that they have all the time in the world. It's all really a matter of perspective, but we're really dealing in part with the same thing or dimension called time, but time isn't fixed. I like to say that time is this. Time is a theoretical instrument measuring eternity. Time is not fixed. We think that time is fixed, and time is a tool that we use, but time is a man made tool to basically account for this period of existence. So, to answer John's question, is time the same for every person? Absolutely not. Matter of fact, I like one of my videos, I talked about time travel. 150 years ago, we were doing pretty much everything on horse and buggy. So if we wanted to travel from, let's say, New York to California, it could take literally weeks, if not months, depending upon the terrain and how they were to get there. Today, in a car, we can travel from New York to California in a matter of 2 to 3 days, depending upon how fast we're going. In a plane, we're talking just a matter of hours. So time is relevant. Now we sped up time. We have more time, whereas the average folk about 150 years ago, all their time was spent on working, and very little time was given to rest. Now, because we do things so much quicker now, the things that it took them all day to do, we can do in a matter of hours. So time is relevant. So, example, prior to getting on the call, I decided, well, let me go and take a nap. In that nap, I had a series of events that literally would have taken all day. But in that nap of 15 minutes, it seemed like I was time in a dream. We say, well, that's a dream. you're living in a dream. Now, because we call this dream reality, it doesn't make it any less the dream. Mine is always first cause, and we have different levels of this dream. And like I said, when we're in the dream of sleep, for example, at that moment in that dream is real. And even if you go into a deeper level of sleep, then of course that level, so we can even in dreams have different levels of dreams. So, and again, I know that when I'm challenging reality, but it's just not me. This is just not theology, it's also science. When I'm challenging what we call reality, many people turn off because, of course, they're not accustomed to looking at what it is that they see as real as not being fixed. And what it holds is now the wonderful thing about this and realizing that this thing called time, reality isn't fixed, it means that we can change it. And listen, don't go and try to do a global change. Simply work on changing yourself. Start looking at the world that you want to create, the thing that you want to be, do, or have, and start focusing your attention accordingly. So, again, we do that by the first thing that we're talking about right now is emotions. So, when we begin to direct our feelings, our states, our attitudes, our dispositions towards more of what it is that we want, we become as a magnet to attracting that. Why is this relevant? We're talking about having more. And we're really coming from the place of to him who has, more shall be given. To him, her who has not, even that which they have will be taken away from them. We're talking about the having in consciousness, holding a belief, holding a vibration. You got to get what I'm saying when I say that. I know that this sounds like make believe fantasy, but when I say that you're vibrational beings, the wealthiest people, the most successful people, the most affluent people, the healthier people understand that thoughts create reality. Now, everyone else believes that reality is creating this drama we call life. If you understand that your thoughts create reality and you understand, okay, what I'm vibrating at any given moment, that's what I'm drawing into my life. And listen, don't just take this because I'm saying it, test it for yourself. Look at your attitude at any given day and look at what continues to show up. Look at your lifestyle. Look back on the last week, the last month, the last year, the last decade, for example. Look at your attitude and look at what continuously, most often showed up in your life. We call that fruit. We call that the actual offspring of what it is. You know, we talk about the matrix. You know, the matrix is the womb of imagination. When you're talking about the womb of imagination, imagination is going to give birth, out picturing, manifestation, materialization to what it is that you think about most often. Practical example. You go into a store and you see an item and then you say, I thought about something like that, you know, a few months ago, a few years ago, when I was a child, whatever. Someone else thought about it. The only difference is they took action on the thing that they thought about. As I will often say, because we're connected, there's no separation as much as we believe that we're individuated. Separated. We're not separated. We're individuated, but we're not separated. Universe gives a thought, for example. Do me a favor, Leona, in the future, if you can give me a few less lines, because what happens is YouTube only gives me a few seconds, about a second to read what it is you're saying. If you can break it up for me, I'd appreciate it because what I can do is answer that part. And then if you have a second part of that question, I would happily answer. I know that it spoke of hours and time and so forth. And again, like I said, thank you, appreciate you. Um, like I stated about time, time is a theoretical instrument measuring eternity. This is a man made tool. What we're dealing with is the realm of, let me say it this way, the infinite. Everything is happening right now. And this is why right now you can go back into your past in a revision and see a different present and come back to your present and experience a different feeling about what it is that you have. So then what that's going to allow you to do is project a different future that's also happening right now. So, or going into your future and imagining the person that you want to be, do, or have, come back to your present, start living from that future when experiencing the promise. Did the interval of 300? That was Neville's. Listen, in my promise experience, I didn't sit there and do a count. That was Neville's experience. Let me say this about the promise. This is important. Um, when we start talking about the 1260 days, that was Neville's experience. Don't look for your, don't just, let me say it this way, don't discount your experience because it didn't happen in 1260 days, for example. So no, no, listen, I'm Jay, your your experience is your experience. As I was kind of stating to John, Neville said that he broke his down and it was 360 days, according to like the book of Daniel and so forth. Mine's wasn't that. But nor did I judge and say, oh, mine's wasn't 360 days, that, I mean, 1260 days, that it couldn't have been. Don't get caught up into that. God's going to speak uniquely through you as you, whatever you call that infinite intelligence, source, creative being, whatever. Your experience is not going to be exactly like Neville's. Too many of us, we make Neville the God. Neville was a wonderful teacher, he was a wonderful instructor, but his experience was solely his experience. His experience wasn't Abdullah's experience, it wasn't Joseph Murphy's experience, it wasn't Reverend Ike's. Each person has their own unique experience. For example, Neville said that his child, the David, was a certain color and that was according to Neville. Mine wasn't that experience. When I interviewed 2020 and he talked about his promise experience, his child wasn't the same color as Neville's child. What am I saying to you? Your promise experience is uniquely your promise experience. Don't get in, disturbed or whatever and say, well, mine didn't look exactly like Neville. Neville's not your God. Neville is an example. He's not the God. God's going to speak uniquely through you. And I'm not discounting Neville's experience, but it was solely Neville's experience. And this is why even utilizing, the tools that Neville provides for us. Everybody doesn't have the same experience with those tools. And as I will tell anybody that's using the tools of Neville or anybody else's tools, my tools or whatever, if they're not working for you, try something else. But the tools, it's like going to school. Let me kind of touch on this briefly. It's like when you go to school, they teach you your math, your reading and spelling and all this stuff. It's the foundation. When you're taking on other people's tools, their experiences, the things that they're giving you, the things that work for them, it's a foundation. Now, what happens is you take the tool of going into the silent. Somebody asked about was their going into the silence too long? Absolutely not. That was your experience. If it took you all day to be in the silence and from that experience you got what it was that you needed, then so be it. If it took you 3 seconds to go into the silence and in those 3 seconds you got what it was that you needed, then it's enough. Your experience is uniquely yours. Please don't get caught up in all these other people telling you that it has to be like this. When I share tools and things with you, these are just foundational tools that have worked for me. Some of the tools may work for you, others may not. But you don't discover that until you implement them and try and see what works best for you. Some of them you're going to use like, man, this is a miracle, and you're going to get the results. When you Caesar, you take the chemo. In the world of Caesar, I don't acknowledge. Let me say this. I don't not acknowledge that it's not. These things are not happening. The world without. I acknowledge. I'm not one of those people that walk around and say, well, somebody just got shot. That really didn't happen. No, somebody really got shot in this realm of reality. Even like when I'm in my dream state, the stuff that's happening in the dream state is really happening in that dream state. I'm not discounting walking through the dream state and saying, oh, this stuff is just not really happening. It's a dream. If I put myself in the place, let's say hypothetically, of a mugger, for example, and he pulls out a gun, I'm like, well, that's not a real gun. You know what I'm saying? But I don't let the world of Caesar dictate to me what it is that I'm to be, do, or have, or what I'm going to manifest and draw into my world. I use it as a guide, but I don't let it determine. Listen, let me say it this way: thought becomes the real. So, what we're talking about is you controlling your world. It says that you've been given choice of your world, of what you're going to be, do, or have. Don't I talked a few weeks ago about a young lady saying that her grandmother got sick and she blamed herself for her grandmother getting sick. Her grandmother's choices are her grandmother's choices, and her grandmother's outpicturing her grandmother's thoughts. It says in scripture that don't let your teeth get set on edge because the sins of your father. You're no longer being accounted for the sins of your parents. They're responsible for them. You're responsible for your thinking. So your thoughts shape your reality. Now, the funny thing is with thoughts, you and another person could be in the exact same scenario, and you have totally two different outcomes or even two different experiences. It's like two people going to a party. One person says, oh, that party was very boring. The other person says, man, that was the greatest party ever. I can't wait to go back to the next one. What happened? Two different viewpoints. Same party, two different viewpoints. We're dealing with the same reality. I choose to see my version of the reality. And let me say this: we talk about God and so forth. No two people out of 8 billion people see the exact same God. We believe that we do, and we have some agreements of what we say God is or who God is and so forth. Even if our denomination is similar. But none of us see the exact same God. None of us see the exact same world. None of us, we're so unique. We've been created, we're individuated versions of the divine. And God is experiencing himself, herself, itself as each one of us individually. So, why is this important? If, let's say, you want abundance, you want health, you want a loving relationship, when you start seeking for that evidence in your reality, that's what's going to show up. Somebody can say, there's no good partners out there, male, female, whatever. And for that person, they're going to see all the evidence of there's no good partners out there. But for the person says, you know what, I'm a love magnet. Love comes to me easily and effortlessly. People just love me. I love people, and that's so that person's going to experience that reality. When a person says, well, we got to look at the economy now, this is the worst economy ever. What's going to happen is, again, we're talking about the world of Caesar. You're going to see the worst economy ever. Now, somebody else can say, this is a prime opportunity to create something that's going to be awesome, that's going to transform the world. I'm a love magnet. Absolutely. Absolutely. So once you own whatever that reality is, you're going to start seeing more evidence of that. And like I said, we use the example of the ram in the bush when Abraham was called to offer his son Isaac as an offering. This is a metaphor. But it's a metaphor of your story. I like to say this, that from Genesis to Revelation, it's your story. Now you say, well, Coach, what does that mean? I'm not even religious. What it is a compilation of different moods, attitudes, dispositions. And when you look at the story and you begin applying, it's okay, well, how does this apply to me? So looking at the ram in the bush, Abraham, in his mind's eye, was to offer up his son Isaac. What is that thing that you believe that you have to offer up? What is that thing that you believe that you have to get? Well, I can't be wealthy because wealthy people, then that's the thing you got to give up. So only thing that you're going to keep seeing is evidence of wealthy people being whatever it is that you believe the wealthy people are. Once you change your focus and you say, there's a lot of wealthy people doing a lot of good, and I want to be a different wealthy person. I want to be that person that's giving and making a difference in the world and, doing philanthropy, whatever. You'll start seeing the evidence of that. So now all of a sudden, when you start accumulating wealth, you're like, okay, I'm using my wealth to do good. What happened was you're no longer being blinded by that old mindset. We call that the reticular activating system. RAS, RAS. It simply means this: you can't think two opposing thoughts at the same time, good, bad, or indifferent. Whatever it is that you give your attention to, whatever it is that you believe, let's say it this way, that's what's going to show up most often in your world. And so if I say something that rubs a portion of your reticular activating system in a certain way, you click on and say, oh, he's talking about that. Because we've been so indoctrinated, we've been programmed by religion, by the school system, by the government. It's just what it is. I mean, in order for society to work, this is necessary. There has to be a place of agreement. Unfortunately, the place of agreement keeps us in lack, loss, and limitation more often than it does in wellness, wisdom, and wealth. I'm not clear on the question, but um, everything's subjective to the individual. Whether you see a world of abundance or a world of lack, if it was truly, let's say, a world of lack, for example, and it was true, everybody in the world would have to be at a place of lack, but we know that that's not the case. If it was truly solely a world of abundance, then everybody in the world would be operating from a place of abundance, but we know that that's not the case. If it was solely a world of love, then of course we know that it would be a world of love, but we know that that's truly not the case. What am I saying? Each person reflects in the world, sees in the world, the mirror of what reality is, what their predominant thoughts are. So the world reality, as we call it, the mirror, reflects to us what it is that we believe. And we can't see anything else other than what it is that we believe. And we'll look at the world's mirror reflecting back on us. And until we change that belief system, first it has to be challenged. And that was one of the things that I had when I started studying Neville Goddard. My original belief system, and again, you have to understand that that belief system came from the time of birth and even thousands of years before that. So I had no means of challenging it until I heard something different. Or let me say this, until I was open. Neville had died and his teaching had been out there way before I was born. So it wasn't that the teaching was there, I just wasn't open up to anything new. You know, I'm dealing with a coaching client now, and she's still running from the indoctrination of her old religious program, and she's trying to move forward, but because she's stuck in those old religious programs, she can't move forward. And that's with all of us. Until we're able to envision or see something different, a new ideal, a new possibility, then of course, at that moment, oh, I never thought about it like that. That's when the seed is planted. And we can do this. Most of us have been programmed for poverty, even in our religious beliefs. Now, not everybody in religion believes in poverty. For example, if you look at the Jewish culture, they believe that God is a God of abundance, more than enough, that God has come to prosper them, to make them the head, not the tail. We can also take on that belief, but it will also require that we take on new belief systems. You understand? Our belief system says, well, I'll get mine, and the second me saying something like that, 4 people dropped off. You see my point. We've been so indoctrinated, we've been so programmed that anybody saying anything contrary to what it is that we've been programmed to believe, we turn off. Good to see you, Amanda. We turn off. So, but that's not my business. My business is to tell you how thinking works. And again, my goal is not to even tell you, hold the picture. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to try to make sure that I get to all these points because they're very important. My job is not to tell you what to believe. My job is to tell you that you believe. And according to what it is that you believe, that's what's going to show up most often in your world. People come and they say, you're teaching about a Jesus that was prosperous. I'm not saying that Jesus was rich. I'm just not saying he was poor. There's no evidence in the Bible that Jesus was poor. Then they'll go and they give you a scripture. Listen, when you leave from the Godhead, having all things, And we all left from that Godhead. We all have our origin with the Father. It says in Ecclesiastics that the Spirit will return to God who gave it. So our origin was with the divine. So I'm not going to stay there. My whole point is when you start understanding how thought works and you start directing your own inner conversation towards what it is that you want to be, do, or have, that's what's going to show up in your world. This is what the mega wealthy understand. This is what those who are in health understand. This is what those, whether they articulate it this way or not, in loving relationships understand. Thoughts become things. Your thought is the real. The shadow is what we call reality. We think, and we've been programmed to believe that reality is the real. But go to any store, look around you. I got a few lamps and so forth to lighten up the room and so forth. I got a bottle of water, a time clock, all this stuff. I got a computer in front of me. All of these things started first and foremost as somebody's ideal. It can't happen otherwise. The cars that you're driving and the buildings that you're getting in, it all started as an ideal. Then they started moving towards and started making things happen. They started creating blueprints. They started making building plans. They started contractors. Henry Ford started an assembly line. His idea was, I want to make a car affordable for the common man. And it made him one of the wealthiest men in the world. But it started off as an idea. People thought he was crazy. You understand what I'm saying? When you start directing your own inner conversation to what it is that you want to be, do, or have with feelings, you're going to begin to attract more of that in your life. Now, understand this, you got to stay there. Somebody talked about earlier about being consistent, persistent. We'll talk about repetition in a moment. You have to keep doing everything that you have right now in your life is the byproduct of continual thoughts, words, and actions that you've repeated over and over again. You said, this is just how reality is. If you want to change that reality, you keep doing the same thing, but you give it more of the attention to what it is that you want to be, do, or have. Let's move forward. Your senses act as an anchor. What does that mean? Subconscious mind can't, how you doing? Good to have you. Your subconscious mind cannot, let me repeat, your subconscious mind, some people say, well, subconscious mind doesn't exist, whatever you want to call that part of you that is kind of like what we call an autopilot. But your subconscious mind can't distinguish between what you're imagining and what you're experiencing. Why is this relevant? If you start repeatedly imagining yourself being abundant, walking, living, talking, living from your place of abundance. We talked about the reticular activating system earlier. This is science. This is not some voodoo, white magic. This is science, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and other science have proven this out. Your subconscious mind will start looking for evidence in your reality to verify, just like it has been that lack, loss, and limitation. Now it will start looking for wisdom, wellness, and wealth, and it will look continuously. So opportunities will begin to present themselves to you. It's for you at that point, as those opportunities show up, you step into them. I talked about years ago when I was unemployed and I was looking for a job opportunity, and I saw the job opportunity. I just didn't know what was going to come from, and it came from the most unlikely place. A person that liked the girl that I was seeing at the time. He liked her, so he was trying to impress her, and he gave me a resume so that I could get into his organization, and that's how I stepped into telecommunications. You don't know where it's going to come from. Your job is to see the bigger, better, more in imagination, and you start living from that. This doesn't mean go out and get in debt or anything like that. It starts just holding the energy, the vibration. We talked about the emotions a second ago, so I'm not going to go back and rehash that. But as you begin seeing these mental movies in your mind, your subconscious mind, like being in a dream state, I talked in a short video recently about how I had foresaw and I didn't realize that I was foreseeing flooding in my basement. One of the devices had a leak and it was spewing water all over the place. I thought that I was seeing a past event, not realizing that it was a current event. And some chain of events or series of events caused me to go down to the basement and catch the leak in time so that my whole basement wasn't flooded out. Subconscious mind sees it as now, whatever it is that you're imagining. So, only thing you have to do is clothe yourself continuously, persistently, and the evidence in the mirror called reality will begin to show up. This Rockefeller, very poor boy, he tells the story that when they were, how many of us remember the school pictures? We had Olin Mills, so everybody had the same look. But he was taking school pictures, and it says that he was so poor that the photographer said, "Listen, you're going to mess the picture up, so we're going to put you outside the picture. You're not going to be in the picture, and this is going to let all the other kids look really nice and clean and so forth and prosperous." And he was put out the picture. And Rockefeller said that he saw it himself at that time being painted by the most famous artist in the world. And he said, the famous artist wasn't painting me in my imagination because I was beautiful. He was painting me because I was powerful. And that story became real. He became, as it were, in his time, and still many people say that he was the wealthiest man ever. His fortune would have been estimated at $600 billion today in today's currency. What is my point? The wealthy, those who are in power, those who are in charge, those that you work for, they understand that thoughts become things. The goal is to keep us thinking about a movie like The Matrix or some other movie and keep it into Hollywood land, believing that it's just fiction, so that we won't begin to use the power of thoughts to begin to transform our world. The goal is to keep us in ignorance, and they do that through government, education, religion, and so forth. That's just the tools that they use because they work. If I can promise you yours in the hereafter, then of course you say, well, I don't need to manifest anything now. That's the carrot on the stick. I'm not discounting the hereafter, but heaven starts now. Know you not that you are the kingdom of God? The kingdom of God is within you. You are heaven. Your mindset. The kingdom of God is the mind of men and women. When you begin to understand this, that your thoughts create things. It says that you've been created in the image and the likeness of the divine. God says it, and it's so. God is spirit, so God is not speaking. So it's really the vibration. You start believing that it's so. Answering your question, you said, "How can I?" And it doesn't. You, I didn't even get the gist of what it was that you wanted to embody, but it doesn't matter what enacting from it being so. Everything happens now, and as you begin to imagine what it is that you want to embody as being so, and listen, it's a practice. You got to get into the habit of the practice. A young man he went on the YouTube channel and he was talking about how he started listening to one and he started practicing in his life the principles that he learned in the 4 CDs. And he's seeing the results. It doesn't matter. It's like people talk about different weight loss programs, ketos, Atkins, and Jenny Craig, and no problem, you can interrupt. Um, I apologize for the freezing. Mine's actually clear, so I do apologize for the freezing. Can't control it, so I'll just, hopefully you'll get what's required or what you need from it. So I do apologize for any freezing or disruption in the video. But we talk about Atkins, we talk about Jenny Craig, we talk about weight loss, about ketos. All the different programs work. All of them work. It doesn't matter what you use. People talk about law of assumption, law of attraction. I'm Neville got it. I'm Reverend Ike. It doesn't matter who it is. All the principles work. Each of one of these people are given the message in their own vernacular, their own life experience. The goal is like Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, Atkins, whatever, ketos, it's you implementing. We keep running from program to program to program to program, hoping that this program is going to be the one. Stay in a program long enough to see the manifestation. Start disciplining your mind. Start putting in the work of thinking according to what it is that you want to be, do, or have. Many of us are so flighty that, in a few days, if it doesn't work out because somebody told me that in 24 hours I can have my SP, that we say, well, this stuff doesn't work. Often, most often, materialization doesn't work like that. Can it? Sometimes, yes. It's not the norm. It didn't take you 24 hours to run your SP away. So now you want to take. My point is, sometimes this work that you need to do, you have to get into a vibrational match of what it is you want to be, do, or have. If you and this person that you're trying to attract are no longer in the same vibrational match, you're not going to win this person back by a bunch of parlor tricks. To the extent that you can get into the vibration of money, health, relationships, then that's what you're going to begin to attract into your life. Neville would often say that all manifestation has its own appointed time. So when I say that it can happen in 24 hours, absolutely. If that's the time of that manifestation, depending upon the seed that's being sown, each seed has its own appointed time. I know that most of us are very immature in this community. And so when we don't have a magic formula, we tend to turn off. The tools that I'm giving you are for mature people who are wanting to put in the time to become who it is that they need to be, do, or have. If you want a quick fix of somebody that's going to give you a formula that's not going to work, even for long term, because you're not a vibrational match for that thing that you want to be, do, or have, there's a whole bunch of teachers out there that's going to give you that. If I wanted 1,000,000 followers, only thing I would have to tell you, to be honest with you, is what you wanted to hear. Tell you that you can manifest anything in 24 hours, putting your hands together, and manifestation pops up. The wealthy, the successful, the people that you're following, the entertainers, they understand that there's a discipline that's required. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear putting in the work. We don't, stuff like this, because we're in I love instant oatmeal. We're in an instant oatmeal microwave society, and we want it when we want it. It just doesn't work. And that's why you're bouncing from teacher to teacher to teacher. And you get to the point that you say that this stuff doesn't work. It's not that it's not working. You just haven't given it the time to materialize. It's like putting a grain of corn in the ground. And you go back the next day and you want that grain of corn to be a kernel, or, a stock of bushels of corn. Everything has its own appointed time. And I hate to be the one to tell you that, but I'm not going to blow smoke up your backside hoping to gain followers. And I'm getting breakfast. Everything in this realm called reality takes what we call time. A lot of times when we start seeing, let's say, us being abundant, being healthy, being in that loving relationship, it's done at that moment. But reality sometimes takes a moment to catch up what it is that we already know. Don't give up the picture because, listen, it's like looking at it this way. You're like, well, if it's not going to happen overnight, you don't have it anyway. So what's the rush if it takes a little bit of time? If it's what you truly say that you want to be, do, or have, then to me, you would put your effort in saying, okay, then I'm going to step into this until it manifests, because the other alternative is not having it. You don't have it anyway. So let's say we're talking about money. So if I get into the state of abundance and I start being abundant and opportunity starts showing up towards abundance, You know, I don't have the money at the first place anyway. So what does it hurt me staying into that state until the money shows up, till the relationship shows up, till the health shows up? Anyway, so say, well, this stuff doesn't work, so I'm just going to throw my towel in. You go back to what you, nothing's changed. This stuff works. I've seen it in my life and other people. I just want to, I'm trying to be straightforward with you. I'm trying to be transparent with you. I want you to understand when it doesn't appear to be working that it's working. But because the manifestation is immediate. It takes reality a moment to catch up. Now, that moment varies from person to person. Some of your stuff, listen, I've had a thought and immediately the evidence of that thought showed up. I'm like, wow. Other things have taken a lot longer. It depends on the item that's being manifested. Certain things like money opportunities may come up tomorrow for you. But that loving relationship, now you got all this money, you're like, well, where's my love at? And other people will show up, but they may not be that person that you're looking to show up. So you have to be mindful of thinking about who it is that you want to have in your life. What are the attributes of that person and so forth? Some of those things are going to be broad, some of those things are going to be narrow. But money opportunities will always show up. Love relationships will always show up. The opportunity, health opportunities will always show up. What are those that resonate with you? And you have to be open to see those that are not for you. Otherwise, you think that every knucklehead that shows up, that's my SP. And sometimes it's just a knucklehead that shows up. He's not your SP. But because he was the first one to show up at that moment and you did not have, this is what I'm looking for. And so he's abusive. You see that he's abusive, but you just write that off and say, well, he's my SP. I'm going to make him better. No, he's going to still be an abusive knucklehead. If you see certain features in that individual, you say, well, that's not my person. Okay, universe, I'm still waiting. You know, don't think because money shows up in an opportunity that's a scam, for example. You say, well, it's a money opportunity, it must be right. It's going to send you to jail. No, they don't. No, they don't believe that it's so simple. So thanks for sharing it. And this is what I'm trying to get you to see. It is that simple. Let me say this about manifestation. Everybody right now, and everybody will see this talk, are expert manifestors. We're designed to manifest. The problem is we're manifesting the things that we don't want. And that's simply because we're thinking in accordance to the things that we don't want. Simple as that. To him who has, to her who has, more shall be given. That's the person that's thinking according to what it is they want to be, do, or have. To him, her who has not, even that which she has. This is why you guys are getting it and losing it. You don't want to hear it, and that's okay. But you got to get into the vibration. I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible so that you can get this stuff, start utilizing this stuff, and start being successful in what it is that you want to manifest in your life. But keep chasing the teachers that tell you exactly what you want to hear. They're not getting the results, and you're not going to get the results, no matter what it is that they're telling you. Most of those folks are lying to you. I hate to be the one to say that. Many of the folks that you're following are lying to you. That's the truth. This stuff works all the time. And for the person that tells you that they're manifesting the perfect life, life has its ups and downs. What I'm telling you that when those ups and downs show up, that you can say, okay, let me keep focusing on, let me keep going through this valley of this illusion called the shadow of reality till I get to the other side. These things, don't think it's strange, is what scripture says, when diverse temptations and trials and tribulations show up in your life. What happens to one happens to us all. Now, just because I don't put on Front Street my life events and the things that are going on in my life, it doesn't mean that they're not happening. I could tell you about car accidents. I could tell you about, recovering from debilitating diseases. And I could tell you about that. It doesn't mean that they're not happening. What I'm saying to you that I keep moving through the valley of the shadow of illusion, or what we call so-called death, till I get to the other side of my reality of what it is that I've imagined to be, do, or have. I don't want you to think that when you're going through struggles in your own life that you're the only one. You're not. Even those teachers that you're listening to, they're going through their own struggles. They're just not putting it out there. They're going through their own relationship struggles. They're going through their own money struggles. They're going through their own health struggles. They're just not putting it out there. Don't think that you're the only one. You're not. Everybody is. But it's how you think about it when you're going through that determines your level of success. Let's move forward. So, like I said, subconscious mind cannot distinguish the difference between what we call as what we visualize and what we're experiencing. Start visualizing what it is that you want to experience. Okay, embody the energy of already having what it is that you want to be, do, or have. You say, well, coach, how do I do that? It's simply the tool that we've been talked out of is the tool that the rich and famous walk into. What is that tool? We're getting ready to touch that right now. We're going to touch that right now as far as how do you do it. You start by, I just gave you a secret that subconscious mind cannot distinguish the difference between what you're imagining and what's real. So first and foremost, you start seeing in your mind's eye, you already being, doing, and having what it is that you want, whatever that is. You start clothing yourself, you start acting as if. I said that we were talked out of this tool when John D. Rockefeller was a very poor kid. He said always that I'm going to be the richest man in the world. He started living as if. He started conducting business as if. Guys, and I'm going to touch on this in another one, but I'll touch on it now. Lifestyle always mirrors what we believe. Now, this doesn't mean go out and get in debt. It means start living from a prosperous mindset, seeing the good, start praising the things that are happening in your life, waking up in the morning, you get a raise or whatever. You start, oh, this is all they gave me. No, no, you say thank you, because whatever you're vibrating, whatever you're holding at that level of consciousness, it tells reality, so-called universe, to give me more of that. So you clothe yourself in the persona, but you got to get a picture. And I use Rockefeller because it's an easy example. Most people know who he is. He got a picture of being the wealthiest man in the world when he was broke, busted, and disgusted, but he kept operating from the picture of who he imagined himself. So he started conducting, living business from that mindset. You start acting from a place of health. Let's say you got high sugar. Somebody said something about having high sugar count and so forth. I start acting as if I'm somebody that doesn't have diabetes. Now, what this doesn't mean is go indulge in sugar. You start watching and listen, I don't eat that kind of food. You start moving away. You become a different person. The person that you are right now isn't fixed. It's only fixed because you believe that it is. So you keep doing and practicing the same habits of the person that has, let's say, that illness. You know, you say, well, I got back trouble. So you walk around with your back all humped over and you walk like you're in constant pain. And you may be. Straighten up your walk. Pull back your shoulders. Start walking with a level of confidence. Watch how your physiology changes when you start taking on a different mindset, when you start acting physically differently. When you start acting confident, for example, and you're talking to another person, that confidence starts to show up and it's like, there's something different about John. I don't know what John's doing, and I'm using John as a John Doe. I'm not speaking of you, John Wick. I'm just saying John as a, person. So John starts showing up differently. Give you a point in case. One of my clients was in a particular industry, so I was coaching him through some things, some challenges that he was experiencing. He started changing his lifestyle. One of the things he started incorporating was a workout program. So now this client, 6 months, a year later, he's kind of buffed. He's looking good. He's going into the office, and women are attracted to him. He says to me, or John Smith, thank you. So he says to me, I don't think it's fair that now that I've been working out, now they're interested in me. And I told him, I said, you're not the same person. I said, you're not the skinny guy that they saw. I said, now you are more confident. You carry yourself differently. I said, you're wanting them to be attracted to the person that was insecure and the person that didn't take care of themselves. And I said, that's just not how it works. My whole point is he became somebody else. Now, in his mind's eye, he still saw himself as that insecure guy that, didn't have a lot of muscle and women weren't attracted to, but he wasn't the same person. So women, people weren't seeing the same person. Even his clients saw a different person. Your personality, ego isn't fixed. You only keep living out that same person over and over again because you believe that that's who you are. And when you start to make believe act as if you're somebody else, you say, imposter syndrome, imposter syndrome. That's ego speaking. That's other people's ego speaking. But when you step into that new prosperous person, when you step into that new prosperous person, that's who you are at that moment of time. It takes us owning that new persona, walking, living from that new persona, that it gets so fixed through repetition, and we're about ready to step on that quickly here, that it becomes now who you are. Now, the thing is like the example of the person of Jesus. He started healing people, people started following, he started becoming this great teacher, and people that knew him said, that's not him. We grew up with that guy. This is not him. And we're going to pull him to the side. We're going to talk to him. We're going to have a conversation with him because he's beside himself. He's another person that's come along beside himself. Come beside yourself and experience and step into that new person. That's how you operate it. Now you have to do some relearning. You have to re-educate yourself. You have to discover about relationships. You have to discover about health. You have to discover about money. But the more you discover about that new identity, there was a movie years ago called Regarding Henry. Harrison Ford was the actor. I'd take those who got an opportunity to see it, pull it up online, whatever. Regarding Henry, lost his memory, some accident, I can't recall the incident, but he lost his memory. And he was this tough, he was an asshole. He was a lawyer, but he was an asshole, and he lost all that. And now he was this meek and kind person, and he had to relearn who he was. This is how we step into that new state. We have to relearn who it is that we are. So we start pouring in new information for that new identity. As we pour in more of that new information, this happened in the military when I was a Marine. This happened as a Christian. It happened as I got into the corporate America. You pour into yourself that new information, to that new information becomes your new identity. And one day you'll look back and you'll be a totally different person. But people will remind you of who you used to be. Ego will remind you of who you used to be, but you'll be a totally different person. Okay, so we're going to step into the next one. Embody that energy of that new state. Action aligns with energy. I stated this earlier. Thank you. Thank you. Action. Many of us in this community, the word action comes up, doing, because nobody wants to lift a finger. We tend to be passive. I don't want to use the word lazy, but guys, your lifestyle is going to mirror what it is that you believe. I can say whatever it is about what it is that I think that I believe, but it says that what's said in secret in the mind will be outpictured on the housetop in reality. Housetop is reality. Thank you. Thanks for showing up. Appreciate you. The housetop is reality. You can't avoid this. If you keep getting into broken relationships, if you keep dealing with a lack of money, if you keep having poor health issues, I can know what's going on here. That's all of us. There's no exception to this rule. When we change what's in here, what's out there will also change. Again, this all takes us getting into a vibrational match of what it is that we want. This requires that we start changing our thoughts, our words, our attitudes. I was speaking. Somebody had put a post in my on the YouTube channel, and he was talking. He said he's going to be a billionaire. I don't doubt him being a billionaire, but in his name was something poverty. I said, you may want to consider. Now, you do what you want with what I tell you. That's your business. But I said, you may want to consider taking poverty from your name. Why do I say that? Because the connotation of poverty has tens of thousands of years of energy behind it. So even though you're seeking, let's say, to be a billionaire, the energy of your name, Jewish people understand the power of names. Latin people, even, African people understand now. As people, people of color in the United States, we'll give our child a name, and we won't. One of our grandchildren, the parents wanted to call her at one point "Ain't Your Mama." I'm like, don't call that baby "Ain't Your Mama." Don't do it. So we talked her out of calling the baby. It was like Jemima or something like that. But I'm like, don't do that, because see, the names that you give your children, you don't have to live with. They do. So give them strong, powerful names that reflect the community in which they're in, so that they can navigate. People look at resumes, and the first thing they'll do is look at a name. And based off of the name of nothing else, that resume gets tossed to the side. So the child doesn't even get a fair chance to even step through the door to do the interview. Names are powerful. So when the person says, I'm going to be a billionaire, but I got a name of poverty, you're fighting against yourself. When Jacob fought against the angel, they called him Israel, the man who walks, who lives, who talks as God. They understand the importance of names. You've got to understand the names. You say, I'm not smart. That's a name. So you're taking the name. They say, taking the name of the Lord thy God in vain. You're taking the name of God, I am, in vain. Whatever you're merging that name with, I'm smart, I'm brilliant, I'm intelligent. You're impregnating that name. And universe says to you, be it unto you according to your faith. Don't give yourself a title that is not in line with where it is that you're going, doing, being, and having. Don't say that I'm this if this what you're saying isn't aligned with what it is that you want to be, do, or have. I don't have to stay there. I just want you to understand there's power in a name. Okay, so lifestyle mirrors beliefs. Consistency. We want to talk about this. We talked about it throughout the talk, but I want to touch on consistency. Repetition is the mother of retention. Scripture says, whatever you're doing, talked about forgiveness in this point here, it says 70 times 7. That didn't mean 490 times. What it meant was until it was done, until that change. So let's talk about forgiveness. Until you forgave a person. When you think about that person, you don't get that harsh feeling that you used to have when you thought about them. Then you can know that you forgave them. When you stepped into a mindset of abundance, you no longer turned off when somebody starts talking about abundance, and all of a sudden you say, oh, let me go to another channel. You understand? When you're talking about a loving relationship, you don't get that knot in your stomach. Say, there's just no good men out there. There's just no good women out there. You've forgiven that ideology, so you've moved on. So it doesn't hold that energy. So now you can move on and attract that which you desire to gravitate towards and attract into your life. Because now you can hold the vibration having of abundance, of a loving relationship, of health. Because that old energy, that old story doesn't have you bound. 70 times 7. You keep writing the story. You keep seeing the pictures of whatever it is that whatever, that sounds like I was speaking in tongues, whatever it is that you want to manifest. You keep seeing the picture. Listen, we're doing this anyway. But the problem, like I said, we're all perfect manifestors. The problem is we're manifesting what it is that we don't want. You're doing this stuff naturally every day, moment by moment. When you wake up in the morning, you're starting to manifest your day. Most often, it's not the day that we want to manifest. So I'm basically giving you tools so that you can be more conscious of manifesting the life that you desire. But start seeing the pictures of who you want to be, do, or have. You start clothing. You start, even though the outward appearance does not reflect it, your clothes may not reflect you walking around in a $3,000 suit. Your car may not reflect you driving that ideal car. Your house may not reflect. You keep seeing it anyway. You keep imagining it anyway. The means will show up. I often say this: the how is not your business. That's the universe's business. The universe will bring. The funny thing is, the universe will bring it about in a way that you can't act, think, and or imagine. You can't imagine how the universe is going to do it. Your job is not the how. Your job is to see the picture, the end in mind, and begin living from that change. Absolutely. As you do it over and over, it gets easier. It becomes a lifestyle to you. You become mindful. Okay, you start doing like Mr. Lindelof often say he does. Where's this thought taking me? And you'll say, listen, this thought right here is not taking me where I want to go. And you'll change the channel. It'll start getting that simple. It's not that those other thoughts don't come up, you just don't stay there. You may entertain them for a while, you just won't stay there because you know that ultimately it's not taking you where you want to go. Thanks, Amanda, for sharing. Okay, now, when you get fully committed to who it is that you want to be, to have, let me say it this way, the easiest way I can say it: when you decide who you're going to be, no one else can decide this for you. We've allowed other people to decide it for us. But from this moment on, when you decide who it is that you want to be, do, or have, when you start imagining, when you start picturing, when you start living from, when you start doing all the tools that we just practiced today and what we talked about last week, reality, let me say this as clearly as I can: reality has no choice but to bring about a manifestation. It has no choice. What you're living right now is everything that you believed up until this moment. Reality had no choice but to say yes to you, good, bad, or indifferent. If you want a different result, first decide, then start doing the work. Don't just think it's going to show up. Even if it showed up, because you aren't in the state of what shows up, you're not going to retain it. Matter of fact, you're going to talk. You see, this is too good to be true. Something's going to happen. Something's going to take this away. I don't know what's. You understand what I'm saying? But when you know that you know that you know that this is who you are, when it shows up, you're like, oh, okay, I'm right on track. It's doing what it's exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Okay, I got rid of that person. Those people dropped out of my life. These new people are coming into my life. Opportunities are coming into my life. You understand what I'm saying? You won't reject it. But when you're not in the right mindset, when you're not operating from the right frequency, vibration, state, when it shows up, you're going to repel. You're not ready for it. Guys, this is Coach DeCarlo. We're going to have another great talk next week. I've been pondering some topics. I don't want to give it away. So join me next week about 1 o'clock, 1-ish, and we'll have another great talk. I love you. I appreciate you guys for showing up. I appreciate you guys who asked the questions. Like I said, just be mindful when you ask the questions. Probably give me a one sentence or two if possible, because they flash them up so quickly that there's no room to receive. Love you, guys. Appreciate you. Thanks for showing up. We'll talk next week. Have a great one.